And so we conclude the Knuckles miniseries, and for once, we have a decent end to a good storyline outside of the main comic. Miracles do exist, and dreams do come true. The cover, once again, is slightly related to something that happens within the comic, though it's slightly more dramatic than any of the scenes in the book, with Knuckles facing down his brainwashed friends in an Echidna Coliseum as a dramatic rainstorm falls around them, with thunder in the background. A bit of a shame, then, that most of the story takes place indoors. After yet another text recap page, we pick right up where we left off, with Knuckles and Archimedes staring down the brainwashed Chaotix, who tell him to give up and make this easy on everyone. Knuckles, of course, refuses, and Archimedes launches a burst of fire to distract them. Vector immediately grabs a fire hose to put a damper on the situation, but when the water stops flowing, all they see is some sort of whirling dervish as Knuckles and Archimedes disappear. Before the Chaotix can react, Knuckles easily lays them out with a punch to each of their faces. Then Dimitri shows up. To be fair, Dimitri states that the reason he's so easily able to beat the Chaotix is because, while under mind control, they can't think for themselves, which apparently makes them less effective in a fight. Maybe it's just worded weird, but I don't see how them not having control of their own thoughts would naturally make them less effective fighters. Anyway, Dimitri pulls the ultimate FU move and just makes Knuckles and Archimedes fall asleep. He brings them into a chamber somewhere and proceeds to exposit once again about things we already know. Look, it was understandable in the first issue, and the second gave us lore from a different perspective, but here in the third issue, it's just repeating itself. He compliments them, begrudgingly, at getting through the desert, though of course Knuckles makes a snide comment, but notes that he didn't know about the oasis. Dimitri zaps them both with chaos energy, stating that he has learned from his past mistakes and he doesn't have to worry about history repeating itself, just as Archimedes sends out a call to all the other fire ants on the island, urging them to come and assist. While they rally and get ready to charge the city, Dimitri zaps them again and proceeds to monologue about how they shall bow to him and quake in terror and he shall rule the world. It's actually fairly trite and predictable at this point, and really does sort of make him lose a lot of the majesty he commanded when he was first introduced, silly headdress notwithstanding. His impromptu monologue gives Archimedes enough time to use his vanishing act to get both him and Knuckles away. Dimitri calls the Chaotix, who despite not having wills of their own are enjoying a nice game of cards, and has them hunt them down, but they run right past the hidden duo. Another use of the vanishing teleporting trick. Seriously, there's sleight of hand and then there's just plain convenience, and the two of them appear in a vent just above Dimitri. Knuckles drops down on top of Dimitri, slamming him to the ground, but he's back up only a second later, and as the fire ants start to swarm the citadel, we see some strange objects approaching the tower from 4 different directions. Knuckles calls out Dimitri for everything he's done, stating that he put himself before his own kind, and that he is who he is because of his actions. Dimitri lunges at him, stating that Knuckles is who he is because of his brother, and that he was the special one, yet more villain rambling, and Knuckles manages to keep from getting hit, mostly because Dimitri seems to forget all about his frickin' chaos powers, and the fact that, being a scientist originally, he's not one for hand-to-hand combat. And as the fighting continues, we see those strange objects clamping down to the side of the tower. Turns out they're actually rocket boosters that start lifting the top of the tower up into the stratosphere. Knuckles accuses his great uncle of not knowing how to fight, where he might be physically stronger now, and has all the cool chaos powers that he never bothered to use during this entire fight, and is quite intelligent, but he doesn't have the honor and pride of a true Echidna or a Guardian. And then he pieces out by falling through the floor, leaving Dimitri to be launched into space, where no doubt the vacuum is going to be very uncomfortable for him. Knuckles manages to drift himself and Archimedes down to the ground easily, where Archimedes compliments his people for helping, but they say they had nothing to do with the place being launched into space, merely creating the hole for them to escape. Before they can figure out who was behind that part in their victory, Necropolis melts into nothing, leaving behind the freed Chaotix. They're glad to see one another, and Knuckles says it was all thanks to him using his head to put the pieces together, and of course, the assistance of all his friends, who he barely interacted with through the entire journey, only Archimedes, really. And as Knuckles and his friends celebrate their victory, the mysterious robed figure observing him from all this time is finally revealed to be Knuckles' father, Locke, alive and well, who says he's very proud to see the progress his son has made, saying he will make a fine guardian and he will continue to watch over him from the background, as his father did for him and so forth. Afterwards, Archimedes compliments Knuckles on learning to adapt to new situations a little bit better than before they'd met, and the two of them reaffirm their friendship. And finally, we reach the end, where we see the head of the Citadel traveling in space as ominous laughter fills the void. I'm a little disappointed here. Don't get me wrong, it's a decent end to the miniseries, but it falls short of the first 2 issues in terms of its story. Of course, you have the whole 2-page recap that feels very redundant at this point, but there's just a lot of monologuing going on, especially from Dimitri, which makes him lose a lot of his menace. Near the end, he just stops using all the power he had at his disposal, and it's certainly not because he's looking for a fair fight, he just seems to totally forget, despite the fact that his energy would easily allow him to overpower Knuckles at any point. The Chaotix, of course, are totally wasted, not even really presented as a real obstacle, despite how they appeared at the end of the last issue, and the coincidences here feel more than a little forced. And then there's the reliance on Archimedes' teleportation trick, as he calls it. However, it does have its high points. It concludes an actual character arc for Knuckles that is easily recognizable and runs through all 3 issues and most of the backups leading up to this, though the extent to which he actually develops his character is pretty negligible given Sega's policy on keeping their main characters as static as possible. And then you have the reveal of Knuckles' father, which was pretty shocking at the time, given Knuckles was supposed to be the last of his kind, and boy, it led to a lot of valleys and hills, shall we say, when he gets his own ongoing, which we're fairly close to getting to at this point. Same art team as the last 2 issues, and same compliments as the last time, as everyone involved once again does a stellar job on the visuals, and while I do find the story a little middling, I have nothing but compliments for the art, though I don't have a lot of specific praise this time. It's just all-around solid artwork with a very good extended fight scene that is unfortunately marred slightly by the fact that no one can just be quiet for a panel or 2. Next time, we're going to be hopping back to the main series as we start on issue 37, and it looks like some pretty serious stuff is going on over there. I'll see you all next time, everyone.